Okay, all right, we're live, guys. Thanks very much for joining us today. I appreciate it. Sorry, there's been a couple of technological hangups, but we're back here. So I'm very happy to be chatting to today with the professor from Movie Community College. So welcome to the show, Professor.
Hey, welcome. This is a great honor. I'm a big fan. Thanks for having me.
Now, thank you for coming on. I just wanted to make sure everybody can see us. Okay, we are starting to have viewers, so just making sure that everybody can actually see us. Just like before, like I said before, we had a couple of little technological hangups, but we are good to go. So I sort of wanted to start with with the more obvious question is because you have a channel that talks a lot about India and you have a soft spot for India yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at your
Mm-hmm.
videos through your channel, and what got you interested, just to kind of let
Okay.
people know what
Okay.
drew you to India first.
Um, my affinity towards India has been, I would say, a journey,
Right.
and it's been made up of kind of touch points I've had with Indians. The very first one that was really in depth. There was a foreign exchange student in
Right.
high school, and he was a really smart kid. He was very mischievous in a
Right.
sense that he decided that he was going to make some extra money by selling marijuana to the stoners.
Okay.
But what he did is he took like herbs. It wasn't
Okay.
really marijuana, and
Oh.
and he got away with it for a while. And the stoners decided
Right.
that they were going to pick on him, and I kind of stepped in and because I thought it was pretty funny. I
Right.
stepped
Right.
in and made sure that he wasn't harmed.
Right.
And so that was like the first incident. And then some time goes by, I would say probably 3 or 4 years. I find myself in Phoenix, and I'm working with all Sikhs.
Oh,
There's
wow.
probably 10 of them.
Okay.
And the Sikhs were super cool because at that point in time, my awareness level was small, and
Right.
I thought the Sikhs were Muslims.
Right. Right.
And I would ask them, "What are you, a terrorist? Why the turban?" And
Right.
they were patient with me, and they would say, "No, no, no, this is our religion," and they would explain to me the points of Sikhism,
Right.
and they were super cool, super kind, and they were older than me at the time, and
Okay.
they would look out for me. They would help me with the business. I mean, whatever you needed, they were there, and they were just super super nice people.
That's cool.
And some time passed on, and 9/11 happened.
Right.
And right down the road from where I live is a place called Mesa Star, and it's a Chevron gas station that was owned by a Sikh family, still owned.
Right.
And after 9/11, the dad was out planting flowers, and a ignorant American drove up and shot him in front of his little boy and said, "This is for 9/11."
Right.
And they kind of reverberated. I mean, that was like when that story broke here, it was like they're not even Muslim. Like
Right.
it's I don't know. I was struck by the ignorance. I was once in that place of ignorance where I didn't know the difference,
Right.
and I got to know the Sikh family, and they're good people, and it was very sad. And I also got to know the shooter's family, um, and we had touch points with the shooter's family, and it was from. It's kind of hard, man. It's like the Sikh family. I saw the pain caused by ignorance.
Right.
The shooter family, I saw the pain caused by ignorance because dad's now in prison forever.
Right.
And it was um, it was kind of an awakening in a sense, I would say, towards things. And then some more time went on, and I get a background in like podcasting and radio, and I wanted to try YouTube. And and I was doing kind of comic book movie stuff, and we did a video on the movie Raid,
Right.
not J one, the Malaysian film,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
I started getting messages from Indians saying, "Hey, you should do trailer reactions to Indian films."
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. And so I did a couple trailer ones, and they were terrible. Like I did a trailer reaction to Sholay,
Right.
and I had no idea who Big B was at the time. I had no idea that this was a classic. But there's
Right.
a scene in Sholay where Big B and his co-star hold hands,
Right.
and I made a joke about that, and I had no idea that. And I got pummeled and beaten and in the comments about it, and and then the more I started watching Indian films, I guess I was really embarrassed by that. Like, how could I miss such a big, like, this is such a big film and I missed it completely. I need to really pay attention and get to know the film. So I started watching the films, taking notes, trying to pay attention to who's doing what. And I started to see something in India that you don't see in America. Karl Marx said, and I'm not a Karl Marx fan, but he said, if you give me the poets and the musicians, I'll take the generation.
Right.
And I started watching these old Indian films, something different, something that harkened back to what America used to be. There was great storytelling. There was an emphasis on family, on culture. There was morality in the movies, of a sense of the good guy always winning, with some kind of message to the viewer. And they were entertaining, and it was done without the gratuity that you would see on American television or movies. And I was just like, wow, this is really good. And then as I progressed watching the movies from the old stuff to the new stuff, I started seeing a change in the storytelling, and what it started to awaken in me is, oh no, liberalism is here.
Right.
This is like how it was in America back in the 60s. It was like, feminism has crept in, this idea of, like, how do we remove the Hindu from his family and his culture and make him asecular, amoral? Well, we do it through the movie, we do it through the storytelling, we do it through false narratives. And I see a lot of that in the films, and it bothers me. It bothers me when I see the same arguments that were used against the Americans, to put them in kind of in a PC self, like, oh, you can't say this, you can't do that, and I think a lot of it lays in a handful of the Bollywood stars. I see. You look at America, you look at India, you look at Israel, all democracies, all places where innovation runs free, where you have an opportunity to do something with your life, an opportunity to be free, but there's a common enemy. There's a common enemy, and it's to me, from my vantage point, it looks like I'm going to have to turn the hat around because this is about to get real. Forgive me.
We like real.
It's there is a pairing together of liberalism and radical Islam, and they're coming together to redefine cultures. The Ottoman Empire cannot physically take down India, Israel, America, but they sure can bully the culture and move people away from it, because you don't want to be painted as the hate monger. You don't want to pay. In the more I look at India, it's like it hasn't gotten in yet, like it is in America. And I see things that really bother me. It bothers me. Rahul Gandhi bothers me.
Right.
It bothers me
He
when I hear
bothers a lot of
Congress
people.
Party. What's that?
I think it bothers a lot of people.
When we start hearing about Hindu terror, only during election cycles. I mean,
Right.
that's the stuff that happened in America with Obama and with Clinton, where it was the Christians are terrorists. You know, we got you know, in America, don't worry about the Islamic terrorists. We need to worry about the Christian. And it's
Isn't
just
it
like,
weird?
what?
Sorry to cut you off, but isn't it
Huh?
weird that there's such a strange like companionship between the sort of left liberals and
Hmm.
the kind of radical Islamists, which
Hmm.
if these liberals were in Islamic countries, they'd probably be jailed up. They probably wouldn't be able to leave their houses.
Hmm.
Probably wouldn't be allowed to drive in certain situations, although that's changing. But they would be some of the first people that would be sort of oppressed in more radical Islamic societies. But they have this weird nexus outside of
Hmm.
those societies where
Hmm.
they're sort of comrades in arms. And I've always found that connection to be so strange because they have literally nothing in common.
Oh, I agree, and I think it comes down to the idea of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, because it's if we can, it's almost like you have the liberal and you have the extremist who say, you know what, let's get rid of the democracies and then we'll worry about each other,
Right.
because there is peace. You know, trying to I think trying to rationalize with these folks is like rationalizing with a rabid dog. You just can't. There is no there's just no polite way of doing it. You're not going to convince them of their argument. I think what's really well. I think what the tie is between these two that you hinted at is fascism. I think, you know, when you look at Iran and how they became so anti-Semitic, it was Hitler that taught them that. And I think this is where the marriage happened, is where the liberals, I think, are really the kind of the Nazi party, just repackaged and brought in.
And I kind of see what you're trying to say, because what I see is that with certain sections of the liberals, because I don't want to obviously clump them all together, but with certain sections of the liberals, the more sort of vocal ones, the more
Yes.
that shout and scream on social media, and that they go to colleges and they shout people down, and if you
Hmm.
if you say something they don't like, then immediately you're a bad person. Immediately,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
you're a racist. We're let's just to be clear, we're talking about those people.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
people are a certain kind of, that is just it. The horseshoe theory, that they are a certain kind of fascists in themselves, where
Hmm.
no other opinion other than theirs is correct.
Right.
There's no middle ground. That's the problem. There's absolutely no middle ground. If you do not say exactly what they want you to say, that means you're wrong. There's
Hmm.
there's absolutely nothing that can diverge from what
Hmm.
they sort of have to say. And I feel like that's a very sort of fascistic view of everything.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, and so that is something that has always bothered me, and that's something that I kind of agree with you when you say that that's something that I've started to see in India.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you're seeing that, like, how Hollywood always has to lean a
Yes.
certain way.
Yes.
If you're part of Hollywood, you have to say certain things, you have to
Hmm.
believe certain things, you have to act a certain way. And the Indian film industry wasn't always like this. Even, say 10 years ago or something, it wasn't like
Hmm.
this. But
Hmm.
it started to become more and more like this, where if you have a certain opinion, you're going to be liked by people, and you're going to be written about nicely in newspapers and all of that stuff. And if you don't have those things to say, then good luck finding work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So is that what you were kind of referring to when you were talking about that shift that you see in Bollywood?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at somebody like Priyanka Chopra. I'm fond of her. One of the first movies that I saw was Mary Kom, and
Oh,
I did a movie review of it, and she tweeted about it, and I was touched by it. She had
oh, that's
kind things to
cool.
say. But what are you doing with Quantico? Like what are you doing? Like
Right.
it's you see that you see I think I don't know why you take a character like Salman Khan. I don't understand why there's not more pressure put on him. With his brother having ties to Dawood Ibrahim, like, and doing all kinds of just crazy cricket betting stuff. Like, I don't. Uh, there is a disconnect there. To me, you look at Priyanka, you look at Salman. You, I've had some touch points with SRK, and he's a very kind man. But there seems to be sometimes a not an India first view, but more of a Islamic first view in what they're doing, and it, it's hard to say because it hurts a little bit.
Right.
But you take the issue of Pakistan. America really helped create Pakistan.
Or at least,
When
they helped them sort of sustain
absolutely,
Pakistan for a long
absolutely,
time. Yes.
absolutely, and I think America's idea was, well, since India is kind of friendly with Russia, we'll be kind of friendly with Pakistan, and we can keep a stalemate of Cold War going. But when you see everything that's going on in Pakistan, the constant raids over into Kashmir, killing innocent people, and India I think, has shown so much restraint in not just like sending them back to the Stone Age. Um, and American money helps fund this, and it's something that really bothers me. It's something that I wrote a letter to President Trump, and I mentioned in there about that. About this issue. I would love to see America, after all the North Korean stuff kind of dies down, to see him really focus back up on Pakistan and putting the pressure on them, because they are truly a failed nation, and we shouldn't be propping them up, especially with their unwillingness to abandon the terror card. It's a shame.
I mean, it's when you sort of go back and look at the history and what was happening, you kind of understand the decision America made, because they felt like, oh, India had a really good relationship, or a decent relationship, at least to say, with the USSR. So then we need a counterweight in the region.
Mhm.
But what needs to happen, and what people need to realize, that the world has changed a lot from the 70s.
Yes.
The world is not the same
Yes.
world in the 70s. India is a very different country from what India was in the 70s. And the thing is that they also need to realize that, okay, they're supporting Pakistan and they have an ally, so to say, in that area of the world. But how much have they actually received in return? How much have they actually gotten back? Yeah, they get to, park their
Nothing.
planes there and stuff from, whenever they need to. But apart from that, what have they really gotten? I mean, they didn't really, Pakistan didn't even tell the US about bin Laden living there for 10
Yes.
years.
Right.
They had
Right.
to go get that information themselves. And then they had to go over their heads and take the guy out. Like, they couldn't even
Yes.
tell Pakistan that, okay, we're going to go take that guy out, because somebody would have leaked that information to him and he would have been out of there.
Mhm.
So that's the crazy part, because for so many years it's a lot of giving and it's virtually no receiving.
Yes, you're right. You're
You
right.
know?
And we're paying a lot of U.S. tax dollars to that, a
Yeah.
lot. I want my money back. Where do I go to get my money back? Is
Yeah,
there like,
exactly.
is there like a customer service place in Karachi that I can go to and say, I need a refund of my tax money because you're not a good ally? Or at
Yeah,
least
they
we needed
spent
like,
it, man. It's gone. They spent it on freaking Taliban.
hey, let me ask you something. You're in Chicago, right?
Right.
What part of Chicago?
Northern, sort of North Chicago, Ravenswood area.
Nice. I'm from Joliet
Right, right,
in the
right.
suburbs, south. How long have you been in Chicago?
Just over a year and a half.
Over a year. You like it?
I like it. I don't mind the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind it too much.
I miss the cold. It's freaking hot right now in the
Yeah.
desert.
It
It's
was
hot.
like a couple of days ago. It was like 82 degrees outside, and people were losing their minds. And I
Really.
was like, man, it's a good thing you're not in like India or Arizona right now or something, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah, because
So it's 108 today.
oh wow, that's
With
fun.
with that, I could survive India, right?
Right. Oh yeah, easy. If you
It'd
can
be like,
survive, like if you're fine in Arizona, you'll be fine in India.
yeah. I want to
It's
go to Wyzag.
You know, that's I was so okay. So let me address a couple of things, and I'll get to that Viasac point because I got a comment about that on Facebook. So a
About
couple of
Wyzag?
people, yeah, a couple of people are asking me. Yes, a couple of people asked me that on Facebook. So here on the live chat as well, a couple of people are saying that it's very kind of you that you guys are offering to telling me about the pay button. So I've applied for monetization and I haven't been approved yet. I'm hoping to get approved sort of by the end of June. So I think I'll be able to enable something then. Until then, I again really appreciate the sentiment. And Aloha Maloha, I think, was the person that asked me the question, or it was probably the observer that asked me the question. And they were asking if there's going to be any question and answers. And there are. There are going to be
Sure.
question and answers for sure in the last 20 minutes of our interview. So
Okay.
make sure to put your questions into the live chat, and I will put it to the professor towards the end of our
Okay.
interview.
Okay.
And yeah, so coming back to Vizag, one of the questions that I got on Facebook was, please ask the professor why he wants to visit Vizag.
Okay. So, we were talking about, where would we go to India? Where we want to go to India? I have a real problem about being anywhere close to the border of Pakistan. I don't
Right.
want to be close to that because I'm one bad van trip away to to Karachi, and I don't want to. The only time I'm going to Karachi is to challenge Salman Khan to a wrestling match. I've made a public challenge to him, and he's running from it.
Okay.
So there's a guy named Sai who's been a longtime YouTuber, and he would send me these videos on Wyzag,
Okay.
and I would watch these videos, and it looked like a beautiful little place. And now I have Indian couple that I met. So okay, forgive me. So whenever I go out in public and I see Indians, I go up and I try to have a conversation with them. And and sometimes the people I'm with, they're like, "Oh no, what's he doing?" But I need to know, like, how close am I to knowing? Am I close to did I get this right? Am I close? I'm trying to get a pulse of it, my fingers on it. And so I was at an event, and there was a guy in front of me, and he appeared to be Indian, but I didn't just want to go say, "Excuse me, sir, are you an Indian?"
Right.
Because maybe he's Pakistani, maybe. I
Yeah,
don't
you
know.
don't want
Maybe
to be presumptuous. Yeah.
you don't know. So I went up and I'm starting to have conversations with them, and I'm trying to poke and prod and feel. And I start telling him about I want to take this vacation to Wyzag, but I was calling it what was I calling it? VZAG. I was calling it VZAG, and he was like,
Right.
what are you talking about? And so I pulled it up on my phone, and he said, "Oh, that's Wyzag. That's
Right.
where I'm from." And I said, "Wait a minute, that's the city of destiny. We must be destined to be friends," and we are now. And his wife is from Hyderabad, and so our hope is to go as like families on vacation there to Wyzag, because I like the idea that it seems like a patriotic place. You got the Navy base there, and some of my YouTube friends will say, "But it's such a small city of 2 million.
Right.
Only in India is that a small city.
I
Like
know,
that's a
right?
huge city, right? Like 2 million." And then and then when I think, well, maybe I'll go look at somewhere like Mumbai.
Right.
Have you seen the traffic? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people running around. Everything looks crazy on bicycles. I don't know. Wyzag seems nice and calm. I could go there. I want to do a movie there called
Oh,
The
really?
Gangs of Wyzag. Like the Gangs of Westapore would be the Gangs
Right.
of Wyzag, the untold story of like India mafia there, maybe.
Oh,
I'm
that would be
kidding on that.
interesting.
I'm kidding on that.
But I actually got a comment here in the live chat, and that's from Aloha Maloha, and he's saying go to the mountains, and I couldn't agree more because some of my favorite places in India are up there in the mountains. And if you ever get the chance to go visit India, I would recommend that you take some time out and go see the mountains. Yeah, for sure.
So is that would be like Rajput?
No, Rajasthan is west, so the mountains are north. So that would be like Himachal, Uttarakhand, Kashmir if you're feeling adventurous. So
I don't
I
know.
wouldn't.
Kashmir is
I
one
wouldn't
bad
go.
night away from Karachi.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't really recommend Kashmir right away. Don't dive into that first. But go to like Uttarakhand and Himachal. Those are pretty.
So you're from India.
Yes,
Do you speak Telugu or Hindi?
I speak Hindi. I was born in an area. I was born in an area of India that speaks Hindi. Or
Hindi.
so my mother tongue is this language called Magadhi. So I was born in Bihar,
Ooh.
and Bihar's ancient name is Magad. And
Mm,
so one of the local languages in the area where I was born is called Maghi or Magadhi. So that's my
nice.
technical mother tongue. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
So I wanted to kind of
Interesting.
ask you as well, like, have you do you enjoy watching Bollywood movies? Is that something,
Uh,
or what got
um,
you interested in Bollywood movies?
it was just the process of when I did the first trailer reaction on Sholay, and I made such a tremendous error about everything that I just started studying and watching. And yeah, I love them. I love the fact that there's such good storytelling in the good ones. And some of the acting I think is just phenomenal. Om Shanti Om, I really enjoyed. I found it comical.
Yeah.
Special 26 that we saw was really good. Padvamanti was really good. I think the first one that I saw that really just kind of blew me away was Barfi. When I saw
Oh,
Barfi, and I watched, and it was really easy to watch because you really saw a lot of Charlie Chaplin, where it was more of just expressive. You didn't have to try to keep up with the subtitles. But man, it's just a great industry, and I hate to see it swing left. I hate to see it start to, when I started seeing the posts about the ashamed to be Hindustani that was going
right.
on, like wait, oh hey, I meant to ask you something.
Yeah.
Um, I'm glad you're here. Um, the the little girl who was raped and murdered,
Right.
that they were trying to finger the Hindus on. Do we know who did it?
So we don't really know who did it yet, but what's happened, so essentially, I don't know how much you know about this case, but what's happened essentially is that, so like, the thing with the girl happened, and the crime branch of the Jammu and Kashmir police, they investigated the matter apparently, and they arrested some people with regards to it. And in the charge sheet that they produced, they wrote that this was supposed to be some sort of a broad Hindu conspiracy, and that it was some sort of a Hindu attempt to drive the Muslims out of Jammu. And that, so, and the other funny thing about that is as well that this incident happened in January, right? Nobody cared about it. Nobody picked up on it. Nobody tweeted about it. There was no placards. Nobody was ashamed to be an Indian, nothing like that. So in January, this happened. People waited 3 months. They waited all the way till April. So they waited till April. April is when the chart sheet came out. So the chart sheet comes out, and then everybody starts to lose their minds because now they have something to point to. They say, oh, well, the chart sheet says that it was probably some sort of a broad Hindu conspiracy, so it must be true. But and that's when all the tweet storms and all the placards and stuff coming out that,
Mhm.
oh, look how horrible the Hindus are and so on and so forth. And then people started examining the chart sheet, and it turns out that the chart sheet has some massive holes in it. And there's some big problems in the chart sheet, and there's a ton of things in the chart sheet that just don't add up. And
Mhm.
one of the main accused that the chart sheet said was in Kashmir doing the deed, but he wasn't even in Kashmir on that day. Turns out he was like thousands of kilometers away in a different state, and he was in front of an ATM taking out cash. So that's the whole issue there. And so the problem with that issue is like, look, I'm not saying that Hindus are not capable of committing crimes. Yes, of course they are. But to point the finger when these things don't really make sense and the chart sheet doesn't really add up, that's really dishonest. And to create this whole campaign that Hindus are these horrible people based on the back of this completely, not completely, but based on the back of this highly inaccurate chart sheet, that's very dishonest what people are
Mhm.
doing. And that's what the friction was about among sort of the
Mhm.
people that were like, wait, look at the chart sheet, and the other people that were like, well, whatever the chart sheet said is sacrosanct, and yeah, Hindus are horrible. So that was that
Mhm.
whole issue.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I go two places, right? So this is my routine.
Right.
I'm watching my movies. I'm working through the 100 greatest Bollywood films,
Right.
making my own list. And then when I jump to news, I go check two people. You want to know who I check for news?
Who's that?
Arnab Swami and you. Those are the two people I go to for news, and I get perspective, and then I sit down and say, okay, what do I think about this? You
Right.
and
Well,
Arnab.
I really appreciate that. Arnab is obviously a lot more popular than I am, but I do appreciate that. What I try to do is, the thing is, what we've seen in India for the past few decades is similar to what you were talking about what you've
Hmm.
seen in the United States as well.
Hmm.
There's been this shift where everything that your country does or that your culture does is bad,
Hmm.
and so that's kind of started to be translated into India. And what happened, unfortunately, like when you go back a little bit, what started happening was, these universities in the West, they used to create all this literature and all this sort of research about India, about how India was just this horrible culture and this horrible country, and all they did was this horrible stuff. But what started happening in the last 10 or 15 years or so is the literature that these people were producing in the Western universities, they started using it on their own countries. So you see, you know, one of the biggest problems with this whole PC problem that you see, one of the biggest centers of this problem is universities. You see
Hmm.
American colleges, American universities, and one of the biggest problems of this whole PC culture, and you can't say this, you can't say that, and everything is racist. One of the epicenters of this are the universities. So that's where it kind of started. And then it's been in India for a while, and now you're starting to see it in the United States as well. And i I wanted to get your opinion on that as well. Is how much do you see, because a lot of people, on the liberal side, they tend to say, oh well, this whole thing is just completely overblown, that PC
Hmm.
culture is really going out of control, it's really overblown. That's not the case at all. How much of that do you see, living in America, obviously your whole life? I've only been here for a
Hmm.
short period, but
Hmm.
you've been here your whole life. How much of that have you seen, or is it a more recent thing, or is it something that's been happening for a while and it's only just blown up now? What do you think it really is?
I agree with you. I think it's in the universities, and I think it is I mean, it goes back to Saul Alinsky in his communism bent views of how to take over America. Will do it through the classroom. Um, and I think what has happened is in the 60s, when we had this in America, this sexual revolution, free love thing, it began to desensitize the American mores. It began to, if it feels good, do it, and who are you to judge? And that just kind of desensitized everybody to the point now where you can't say certain things. Now I'm going to say something, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody watching. I'm going to use this just as an example.
Right.
Growing up American in the schoolyard with your friends, we would say the term fag a lot. And
Right.
it wasn't necessarily a homosexual slur. It was more of like loser, effeminate. And it was, kind of tossed around like a schoolyard taunt. Now, if that word is used,
All hell's
People
gonna
want
break
to make it
loose.
into a hate crime. They want to make it into a hate crime, and
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous because it's a word. It's
Right.
it's it's everything that is in the American culture that I've noticed they're going after is anything that is machismo, anything that is American bravado, anything that is manly. The idea of being a rugged individualist doesn't fit into, I think, the New World Order's view of what a man is. I think America, democracies are a huge hindrance to the New World Order, to things that they want to roll out and kind of just rule over the people, because with democracies you have the opportunity to vote.
Right.
President Trump is a reaction to Obama. And when you look at the politics of a nation, it swings in a pendulum. You go conservative and it gets to a point and then it starts to go liberal. And I think what has happened is Obama moved that pendulum artificially too far to the left. It wasn't just a natural sway by forcing his agenda on people. That in America we call him the forgotten man. It's the white middle class person who just wants to go to church, own their guns, and have a few creature comforts. And Trump was able to say, you know what, I identify with you, right? I'm talking to you, and it's now has moved the pendulum all the way to the far right, probably artificially. And the big problem, I think, is the school system, because in America, they're changing math now in America. They're doing new math, and they're doing new math because they don't want the parents to be able to figure out how to sit down with Johnny and say, this is how you do your equations.
Right.
There's a whole new thing because the school has to teach them. There's so much of wanting to take away the control, and this is important, take control away from the parents on the children, because that's who imprints us, right? Are your parents.
Right.
And if we can take away your mom and dad's moral influence on you, my friend, and give it from the state, give it maybe to a Pakistani university professor, and let him kind of fill you with ideas. And that's a real shame to it. And it's something that really bothers me. It's something why a lot of folks get mad at me on my YouTube, because I get political. Because it's like a rerun. It's like I've seen this decay in America go just unchecked, and it's starting up in India, and it's like, I hate to see India go down the path that America. I've said this in my videos before, and I would use this analogy. Like India, to me, is like a 14-year-old girl, very beautiful, very young, very innocent, and she wants to be like America, the West, who is probably like the 25-year-old dude that you shouldn't be hanging out with, that maybe they could call you, like, I don't know. I don't think their intentions are quite pure. And I see so many people willing to rush towards that and try to embrace that. And again, I go back to my statement originally or earlier about Karl Marx. You give me the poets and the singers, and I'll take a generation. I get concerned about that because I see just the leaning. I see, certain directors, certain movies that take things out of context to turn it into a political correctness statement of, oh, poor Pakistan. Poor Pakistan. I mean, they did it to themselves. They're doing it to themselves, and it's it's unfortunate. And I think it speaks again to this alliance that you referred to earlier of this far left fascist and Islamic tying that is in the educational system, in the schools and whatnot. We homeschooled my son all the way through.
Oh,
because
wow.
we didn't want him exposed to that. We wanted him to be, we wanted our son to be able to read, write, and do arithmetic, not be gender fluid, not to be able to have a cocaine problem. We didn't want him exposed to that. And people are like, well, how is he going to adjust? Adjust to what? Anyways, I'm on my soapbox.
No, you made a really good point. When you were talking about how that pendulum analogy, that's a really good analogy, that it swings a little bit, then it swings back over here. But what happened during the Obama years is that he saw that it was shifting a little bit too much one way. And not only did he not do any, not only did he not try to address it, but he kind of nudged it along himself. He was like, I'm gonna give, I'm gonna parrot all those sort of far left talking points, and then people hear it, and then one of the things I remember he said was it was something related to what you were talking about, that every single all these white guys, they're all privileged. And I get the point you're trying to make, but again, like I've been here for a short time, but in that short time, you go to, let's say I go up to Wisconsin, for example, right? You go to Wisconsin, you go to a small town, you see some guy that's working in like a grocery store, packing bags and stuff. He doesn't have as much privilege as you're giving him credit for. He's just a guy that drives a crappy car, goes to his job, goes back home, drinks a couple of beers, goes to bed, does it all over again the next day. You look at the coal miners somewhere, and to say that everybody has that same privilege that a rich white guy in somewhere has, that's a little inaccurate. And I feel like that's what insulted a lot of people. A lot of people just felt insulted. Like, man, I'm just trying to make my ends meet, and you're telling me that I have all this privilege. And so that ways there was this big reaction sort of against it. You know what I mean? And that's where you end up with somebody like Trump. And so I think a good question would be, again, because you're a citizen, you've seen how politics in this country moves. What do you think is next? Like, what tops Trump? Or does America go on to top Trump, or do you think America scales it back down?
Well, I think what the Democrats are going to do is they're not going to see it's the failed policies and the Obama swinging the pendulum far left that gave us Trump. I guarantee you they're going to say what we need to do is we need to out-Trump Trump. What we need is we need our own Trump to come out to be more Trump than Donald Trump is, and call him names, and that will be it. And I think Donald Trump is something unique because he's our first president in America without a party. Republicans and Democrats hate him. And I think what you'll see is boy, if he continues on the role that he is with the forgotten man, I think you will see more people kind of who aren't politicians get involved. But I think there will be an attempt from the Democrats to get like who is more obnoxious than Donald Trump, and we'll get him or her and run against him.
You're already seeing that, right? You're seeing, a lot of these kind of Democrat leaders and people that want to run for office, they're trying to out-Trump Trump in the Twitter game. They're like, oh, Trump's going to say something crazy. I'm going to say something crazy right back. And that's what's going to win me the votes. But I think it's a bad strategy to try and out-Trump Trump, because he'll go as low as he needs to go, man.
Yes.
And so it's I don't think this is a strategy that will necessarily work out. No. And so I just feel like it's either you try and out-Trump Trump, and he'll end up out-Trumping you anyway because he is Trump. But or you actually find a sensible person, like somebody like Kamala Harris is not going to do the job for the Democrats as much as they want to push her. Somebody like Cory Booker is not going to be able to do the job for the Democrats as much as they want to push him. They'll need to find somebody. Ideally, they'll need to find like a middle America Democrat. You find a Democrat from like one of these, like a Nebraska or something, for example, a salt of the earth kind of guy, but he's a Democrat. So he understands the liberal issues, and he understands the issues of people that live in middle America. I think that's what they need. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think the best way of beating Trump is to do exactly what you said. And then, they call them the Reagan Democrats, and you get somebody who's salt of the earth, Midwest, who says, hey, I want a strong America. I want good jobs. Let's try to grow our economy more. Let's, I got ideas about how to maybe make government smaller. And I think you would see a shift happen there. I agree.
How much of Indian politics do you try and kind of take in on a usual basis?
Mhm.
How much do you think you're aware of Indian politics in general?
Um, it's more, I would say, the national. I watched, I kind of watched the BJP tsunami go until it hit South, where everybody kind of ganged up against them. It seemed like all the parties said, "We got to stop this somehow."
Yeah.
Um, and I get concerned with Rahul Gandhi because I see him doing what Democrats do, doing identity politics, doing separation, even doing things like making fun of Modi's yoga workout.
Right.
Like, what do you? I mean, it's just like that really bothers me because this is the stuff that started up in the 80s here in America, and nobody said anything about it. They would just kind of snicker, and it's led to now just this absolute craziness. And I don't like I told you earlier, I don't like Gandhi because of that. And it seems to me like Modi seems like a visionary. When I see what he wants to do for India, when I see him talk about smart cities and passing the no defecation law and trying to get electricity to every village, to me that is just unleashing the beast. I mean, you look at India as an untapped market. I mean, it's just like this nation that's already got a big economy.
Right.
I think it's going to be the biggest. I think India. I do all kinds of stuff here where I talk about India being kings of the East, and I think there's no stopping India. I mean, you even saw it with China. China backed down. All I've heard for the last 20 years is, "Oh, America, you don't want to go to war with China. Don't do it," and they backed down. They completely backed down from the standoff. And I think when I look at Modi, I see a strong leader, somebody who understands, I think, tradition and value, family value, and in putting India, on the path to not just modernization, but being, a global leader. I mean, the smart city plans are just amazing that you see happen, and it's just amazing. And you look at like our neighbor here, Mexico. They have such problems with their nations. They have such problem with their infrastructure. Their sewer system was made out of cardboard, literally out of cardboard
Wait,
pipes, and
seriously?
they seriously. And so they don't flush at all because it will just destroy that. So they keep all their waste kind of in the bathroom. And one of the things that you'll see if you come to Arizona, because we have a lot of migration from Mexico into Arizona, is they bring their culture with them. And you'll see when you go into a restaurant or something, uh, in the men's room, you'll see a pile of used toilet paper because they don't flush, because in Mexico you don't flush. And that's, to
Really?
me, that's just, yeah. And to me, it's just absurd because here you have Modi saying, "Let's do this. Let's fix this. Let's make this thing better." And then Mexico, who I think if you ask the average American, they would think of Mexico being more modernized than India. And
Right.
when you really get into it, it's not. I mean, India it has some ambitious goals, and I think it's great. I think it's going to be a time for the average Indian. This all means jobs. This all means jobs. This all means, like, if you can't get into engineering school or medical school, be a plumber. I mean, that's what I would be doing if I was 18 right now. I'd be like, teach me to plumb, man.
Right.
I'll have my own plumbing business with
Those
trucks and all
jobs,
kinds
man,
of
they
stuff.
came back so hard, those jobs, right? They came
Yes.
back so hard. And so the what I think I really like what you said about Modi, and particularly, what I like about Modi, what I find for the past 4 years that he's been really able to accomplish is that he's been able to create a brand around India. When you go
Mm-hmm.
overseas,
Mm-hmm.
before 2014, you go overseas, Indian leaders go overseas, they shake hands, they smile, they take pictures, come back to come back to these, come back to India, and nothing really transpires. Nothing really happens. Now you have Modi that goes to a country, and the media actually covers it like it's a big deal. He goes. He has been able to. He's one of the few people that has been able to strike up a deal with both Israel and Saudi Arabia, where you have Delhi to Israel flights that fly over Saudi Arabian airspace. Like that was not possible before, because a flight to Israel is not allowed to fly over Saudi Arabian airspace. So there's things that they've been able to do just in a brand wise, and the way they've been able to brand the whole International Yoga Day, since it was recently International Yoga Day, they've been able to brand that so well. And what people don't understand, you have people in India and even people in the West, they've been saying like, oh, yoga isn't really a Hindu practice, and yoga isn't really an Indian thing, and yoga is international. And I'm like, no, it's not. You might try to separate India from yoga, but there's no separating India from yoga. Those two things are linked together. Yes, and he's been able to create that brand that, okay, when you think of yoga, you have to think of India. So despite the sort of liberal attempt to take yoga away from India, Modi has been able to do a thing where he's been able to create that brand, and that I think is a big deal. And like you were talking about, these things, yoga is a huge industry right now, and this can translate if India can take ownership of it, and if India can become the sort of leader, as in, if you want to learn yoga, you got to learn it from an Indian guy. If you want to learn yoga, you got to learn it from an Indian guru. So if India can brand itself that way, just think about it. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. You can create so many jobs for Indians from this industry, right? So that's in my opinion, that's what I think that they've been able to that Modi's been able to do. And I think that, like you were talking about already, there's a project here. He has a project in mind, and I think for that reason, I know there are things that people are upset with him that he hasn't been able to accomplish, but I do think that he deserves a second term to be able to implement some of those things into practice. And I don't know. What do you think about Modi in general?
I think he. I just interrupt you for one moment. Your question. The Warrior Queen handed me a note, and because we're not on the computer, I was going to have her pop in and say hello.
I see.
But we're on my cell phone. The camera's too small. Hold on a second. Can you come here for a second? I don't know if she'll be able to fit in.
Yeah, she probably could pop in.
Can you see how small the camera is?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
That
hello.
one was very small. Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. That is a very small
Yeah, that's
screen.
what I'm saying. I mean,
Yikes. Well, I won't take up your space since it's so tiny.
Oh,
was
no,
really
no
nice to
worries
meet you.
at all. Nice to meet you too.
Thanks.
I think you're onto something with Modi, and like I have YouTube friends that don't like Modi, and I respect their view. I don't.
Sure.
I mean, you're entitled to your view. I completely get it, but to be real, you go back to 1989, 1995. India's brand in America is Apu from The Simpsons. That's what it is. Is this strange? I don't know. I don't understand him. To now, India is a destination. Tourism is coming to India. Like all you got to do is go look on YouTube. How many white people are reacting to videos? It's like every time I turn on, there's more and more and more. And I think Modi has understood that this rise of potential, this kinetic energy that is India, he has channeled it in with these projects. I'm telling you what, man. When my grandchildren it's going to be a completely different world. India, I truly believe India will overtake America as being the economic power, the military power, the world power, and I think Modi is just a man for the time to do that. He's coming from a different perspective of his humble beginnings and rising up and trying to steer this, this monster, this giant of India that is awoken into a direction. And it's a complete brand transfer. I have people at work because of what I do watching Indian films now,
Oh, wow.
or, you know what I mean? Or people will, it's just amazing how much that it is spreading and the awareness is coming. And just on the side note, my friend from Lyzag, I was telling you about, every now and then there's a third Indian that's being introduced into our group,
Right.
or somebody, and he always warns them, listen, I'm going to introduce you to this guy. Don't be freaked out. He's going to talk to you a lot about India. Don't be freaked out. I don't know why I'm rambling now. You got me rambling.
Rambling is good. Like I said, I like to have loose conversations. I don't like to have a structure necessarily around conversations.
Yes.
So rambling
But
is
I
good.
think Modi is taking India. India is the gold rush of America. That's what it is. If I were like I said, if I were 17 years old right now and had no direction, I would be like, Jeremy from the future would come to Jeremy and be like, go learn plumbing and go to India.
Right.
I mean, go be an electrician. There's just so much going on, and it's amazing. And with the film, I mean, the film industry, the music, the sights, the sounds, the food. India is becoming such a global shadow. You mentioned yoga. Yoga pants. You're in America. It seems like every woman's running around in yoga pants, whether they realize the connection or not.
They probably don't.
I had a really bad back injury, and I went to a doctor, and the doctors wanted to do surgery, and I wasn't really comfortable about somebody cutting into my back. And I got with a physical therapist, and he started having me do exercises. It is yoga.
Oh, wow.
And afterwards, he told me these are yoga movements. We found that they help. And it's like, I think you're right. I think Modi offers a future to India. Gandhi offers division.
I agree. One of the good questions that we have in the comment section here is Krishna Rao is asking, have you heard of this gentleman called Rajiv Malhotra? Do you know who he is?
No, describe him. Is he an actor?
No. Rajiv Malhotra is actually a scholar. He's actually an Indian scholar, and he's based in America. So he lives in America.
Okay.
And he used to be a businessman. He made a lot of money in the Silicon Valley, and then afterwards he kind of retired from his business and then just started working full time towards Hindu issues and Hindu causes and sort of some of the problems that Hindu culture faces. And he's written some books that have been very influential in India, particularly among young Hindus, in terms of educating them about the problems that we're facing as a civilization and as a society and as a culture. So one of the things that he talks about, it kind of brings me to one of the things that I wanted to ask you as well is, there's so much potential for partnership and for camaraderie among the US and India. There's so many common interests. There's so many common goals. There's so many things that the two countries and the two cultures can possibly have in common. But one of the big stumbling blocks there is, what he says, and what we see in India as well is this massive amounts of funding that comes for missionary activities. And unfortunately, what tends to happen with missionaries in India, now this is the case of India, because that's the only country that I'm aware of missionary activity in. So with India, what happens is often the missionary activity in India happens in very fraudulent ways, where they're offering money, they're saying, well, this is not really, this is part of your culture, so don't worry about it. It is the same thing. And once they convert, then they say, well, no, now you have to completely forget everything about being a Hindu and Hinduism. So it often happens in very fraudulent terms. And that's one of the big stumbling blocks. And that's kind of one of the big hiccups that Indians tend to have. And I guess the US tends to have when looking at India as well. And again, this I think applies more to sort of Americans who are very aggressively evangelists rather than Americans who are just like, man, I'm going to live my life. You can live your life the way you want. which is, I think, the right attitude to have. What is your feeling about that? Because I feel like that's one of the biggest kind of stumbling blocks when it comes to India
Well,
and U.S. relationships.
I think, when the Goa Archbishop started talking crazy about things, I got flooded with a series of comments, messages, emails about it, and the first thing was the lumping of everybody together of Christians, and in my response was Catholicism is something completely different than Christianity. I used the analogy of saying, like the American saying about the Christian and the Catholic, saying the Hindu and Sikhs are the same. They're not. They're different. And then when you get into Christianity, it starts to get into different sects about what people believe and what they go about. And I remember I think we talked about this on the phone when we were working and setting this up. The things that I've been told about missionary activity in India, where my YouTube friends have said, well, there's this Christian orphanage, but they're forcing Hindus to eat meat, or else that they won't take care of them, they won't provide them anything to eat. That's not biblical Christianity. That's not what Christ did. The idea of evangelizing and being evangelistic goes back to the days of Christ with the disciples, where he said to go out and make disciples of all men. But if you look at the life of Christ and how he did it, he didn't impose on anybody, and I made this comment to you before about conversion. I can't convert anybody, right? It's God who converts. All I can do is live my life and go about my way and honor my views, honor the Lord, right? And if somebody has questions, answer their questions. And out of that, then it becomes something between them and God. So I think I know missionaries in India. One is a church planner, and he is in the Hyderabad area, and he plants churches, and he has a hard time when I talk with him, because he runs into pushback from the Hindu community and the Muslim community on it. And then I know somebody who does an orphanage, and they don't have a whole lot to say about it. That they're there just to kind of to feed and help the young. What I would say, to answer your original question, is the problem with any kind of outreach that's happening from American missionaries is the American church, I think, is in such bad disarray that they don't represent at all the teachings of Christ. They're so far gone. I mean, it's and I don't, but it's hard to make a comparison to Hinduism, I think, because Christianity has actual texts that you can go back and look at this quantity of text and say, oh, this is what he said here, this is what he meant here. And it doesn't seem, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hinduism doesn't have a lot of sacred texts. Am I right? Is that correct?
What the deal with Hinduism is that it has a vast majority of texts. It has such a giant variety of texts that, well, you have the Vedas, you have the Aranyaks, you have the Upanishads, you have so many different kinds of documents and literature that is available for Hindus to kind of pick, their morality and sort of morals from, that often that I feel like, but there are some core concepts. So let's put it this way. There are some core concepts within sort of the Hindu philosophy and the Hindu worldview. But at the end of the day, it provides you with that freedom. The freedom to sort of find your own path, which is an important concept in Hinduism. The concept of self-discovery is, if somebody tells you that they have all the answers, then you run as far as you can away from them. the goal of life is to try and find the answers yourself.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's one of the troubles that Hindus have when they run into, aggressive missionaries, is that they will tell them, I have the answers, this is the answer, here it is. And that is very antithetical to a Hindu system of finding and experiencing the answers ourselves, as is mentioned in our Vedas, as is mentioned in our Upanishads. The best way is to find the answers sort of yourself. What I think would be the best way to kind of approach this issue from an American standpoint and even from an Indian standpoint is that, look, every country should have the freedom to choose who they want to pray to. People in a country, you want to pray to Jesus, pray to Jesus. You want to pray to Allah, you pray to Allah. Whatever you want to do, that's your business at the end of the day. But I think what would be good is to sort of adopt that ideology on both fronts. If let's say there are these evangelists in America who's sending so much money to kind of pay to convert people sort of a system, if they can try to maybe refrain from that a little bit, be like, okay, look, if they come to the book, they come to the book. If they don't come to the book, they don't come to the book. It's their life.
I agree.
If they approach that system, that's, I feel like, such a better system than, because what tends to happen is that the book is sort of kind of forced upon them in a lot of situations. And then they say, well, now that you're a Christian, you have to forget everything about your indigenous culture. And that creates a population of people that are just completely disconnected from their culture, from their roots. And they're just like, well, we're Christian, but we're not American Christians. We're Christian, but we're not British people. We're Christians, but we're not Mexicans. We're Indians, but we have no connection whatsoever to our culture. And that's where the problem sort of happens. You create these people who have no roots, so to say, almost. And so
Now,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
The idea of pay for conversion is not biblical at all.
Right.
I
exactly.
mean, that's not a teaching that Christ ever gave, pay for conversion. In what you're touching on here, and I think the Archbishop in Goa is a prime example of this, is the leftist agenda is in the church. And it's just another face of the prong attack to separate you from your heritage and your culture. Because there's a lot of, this is my own view of American Christianity. I would say probably if you were to see what's going on and compare it to the New Testament, 2%, 3%, maybe actually be biblical. And the rest is kind of a mishmash of political and leftist ideologies that want to subvert, to entrap. Very, very clear. Very, very clear. I want to be clear about this. Pay for conversion it's not cool. That's not at all, right? Conversion from the Christian standpoint, it's God who converts. Right. Nobody, I can't make you convert. I can't pay you. I mean, pay for conversion. It's the idea of your wife saying, or your girlfriend saying, I love you because I love you. Yeah. Not I love you because you're going to hit me. Not I love you because I'm giving you money to say it. Not exactly. You know what I'm saying? It's something that's within. And what you're talking about, you can find examples of in the Bible of the Pharisees and the Sadducees who killed Christ, who crucified him. They were the ones doing the exact same kind of thing. That is religion. That's not faith. There's a difference between the two. And that Archbishop, I mean, you start getting into Catholicism, the Catholic Church, they are lockstep with the New World Order. That is not American Christianity. And right. I know my Catholic friends now are going to be like, oh, this guy's crazy. Well, you know what? I guess I am. But but that's not at all. That's not at all. And that's sad, because I have people that will write me and say about this paid for conversion. That is not at all. I mean, that is really ridiculous.
I know. I met a guy a couple of months ago, and he was I think he was a practicing Christian, but he had the best attitude about it that I've ever kind of seen from anyone on this issue. He was just like, you know what, he basically told me, look, man, I don't care what you do, and I not like I don't care what you do, but he's just
Mhm.
like, it's not my business what you do. You know, I have
Mhm.
my own convictions, I have my own
Mhm.
faith, and I believe in that. And he said, whatever your faith is, I respect. He said, and that's one of the important things as well. You know, one of the important things that Rajiv Malhotra that I just mentioned talks about is there's a difference. People often talk about tolerating other people, like society will only become good if we tolerate other people. But
Mhm.
I think tolerate is not a complete word in that sentiment. I think the complete phrase would be mutual respect. And that's what
Mhm.
he said, that look, I respect what you believe. That's what he said to me. And he said, look, I believe what I believe, but I respect what you believe. And that is a great sentiment, I feel like, to have. And that's essentially what Hinduism says as well. You know, they say that the consciousness that flows within every living being, that whole consciousness is one. But there are many ways that you can perceive that consciousness, that there are many ways that you can attain that consciousness. You know, you might attain it by working very, very hard and doing that for your whole life. That's one way to attain it. The other person might attain it through meditation, years and years of meditation. One person might attain it by immersing themselves into learning and knowledge and books. So there's many ways that a person can attain that consciousness, but at the end of the day, it's all one. So to hate somebody else for believing something different just does not compute in any way. You know what I mean?
Oh, I would agree with that. And again, if you took a close look at the teachings of Christ and his behavior in public, he was not at all about forced conversion or paying for conversion. It was a matter of what he called the elect in conviction of the spirit. It was something that was happening at a different level, a different state of awareness, not by clever arguments, not by forceful tactics. It is um, that is completely counterintuitive to the nature of Christ,
Right.
I mean that's alarming. That's too bad. That's too bad that this pay for conversion business is you know anyways.
Right. Okay, so let's take a couple of questions. Let's move away from the
Sure.
serious stuff and let's try and take a couple
Okay.
of questions. So
Sure.
this question is from Ashok Kemparuvaya. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'm hoping I'm not. So he was the one that actually asked the first Vizag question, that
Uh-huh.
why you wanted to visit Vizag. He had another question, was that
Okay.
what's the worst comment you've ever received when you were saying something nice about India?
Um, I probably the death threats
Really?
or the raping my wife comments that come from Pakistan. I get well, you can always tell when the internet has been turned off in Pakistan because all of a sudden it gets real quiet. And then when all of a sudden YouTube's back up, the comments start flowing in. And it's more and it's primarily impact. I mean, sometimes the Chinese will
Right.
say something crazy, but it's like stupid, it's like I don't even know what you're talking about. But I would say probably death threats from Pakistanis.
Wow, that's just ridiculous. That's the thing that I have so much trouble understanding. You don't like somebody, so let's just go right after his family. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
what a way to win an argument. Seriously,
Yes, yes.
it's really stupid. So okay, Shirish Deep Gupta is asking that he wants to know a little bit, or if you have, maybe you have an opinion on this, maybe you don't have an opinion on this at all, but do you have any views on sort of the refugee crisis in Europe? And do you see any problems with that? Do you see that as not an issue? What do you think about
Oh,
that?
I see it as a huge issue. I think it's being orchestrated. I think it's being orchestrated again to tear apart Western culture.
Right,
I don't think. I mean, there's a reason why nations have borders. There's a reason why nations set up immigration laws because people need to assimilate, right? What happens if all of Texas decided to move to Wyzag, it would change the culture.
Yep.
It would completely change the culture. And so you have to do it as a slow drip, so to maintain your identity. And I think this is a tactic that's being used against nations. And there's an example in the Bible that the Assyrians did when they would conquer somebody. So let's say you came and you conquered me. You would move me out of my home country to another country, and then you would swap it. So what would end up happening is the cultures would shift, and you would be in an unfamiliar area, and it would take longer for a rebellion to happen. And I think it's very much like that it's a huge issue. And again, in this is a big problem with this, is a lot of these folks are unvetted. Who are they?
Yeah.
Right? Who are they?
And the crazy thing also is that with that, you've seen a lot of these refugees that have come in, particularly in Europe. They've come in such a weird way that it's only males, it's only guys coming in, full-grown men coming in.
Yes.
So what you're saying is you're leaving the women, the children behind, and you're running away and coming to Europe. I mean, how can you expect anything? I mean, again, I'm not saying that everybody who's coming in is a bad person, but I'm just saying that it says a lot about at least some of the people that are coming in, and you're so right about that, sort of what you were saying about kind of replacement of culture and displacement of culture, because it is a thing. When people say that, I remember there was somebody, it was on CNN or something that I saw. There was a clip on Facebook or something, and it was this guy talking about, we want to. It was a British guy. I think I forgot what his name was, but it was a British guy, and he was talking about, we want to maintain our culture, and we want to make sure that we maintain our culture. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the CNN anchor just went after him. He's like, "How dare you? So you're saying that those people are not your culture, and they're going to destroy your culture, and so on and so forth." And I'm like, dude, and the same point that you made, that if I moved all of India to Texas, it's going to
change. It would be different.
It would be different. Texas.
I would love it.
Yeah,
I would love it.
And here's the thing, like, even somebody, for example, like, let's say, I have no problem with Americans. I mean, at the end of the day, I live in America, so I have no problem with Americans. But if tomorrow all of America moves to my home state, it's going to change the culture of my home state. And people in my home state might not like it, even though they have no problems with Americans.
Yes,
what I mean?
Right.
And similarly,
it's different. People don't like change.
Yeah, and it's completely legitimate for people to be able to maintain their culture. And that's what Hindus in India have been saying now for these many decades, that it is not a bad thing for Hindus to come out and say that we want to maintain our culture. It's not a bad thing. And similarly, you see that in Europe now, when Europeans are saying that we have the right to maintain our culture. That's not a bad thing. That doesn't make them bad people. Just because they don't want to take literally everybody that walks across the border, that doesn't make them bad people. Like, even in India, we don't want people to just walk across the border. We want to vet them, like you were saying. So it's just such a silly thing. From when I don't know, I just feel like it's a silly thing that people get all bent out of shape about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so one of the other questions that I got as well, I think this was on Twitter, and one of the other questions was, what are your top 3 favorite Bollywood movies so far?
Top 3 favorite Bollywood films. Gangs of Wasseypur.
Oh.
I would say Dangal.
Dangal's a good movie.
And Gangs of Wasseypur, Dangal. Siddiqui's such a good actor. You know that? He's I don't know if it's acting. Do you think he's really just a creepy dude? Like, he just plays that so well.
He has the look, for sure, of the creepy dude. But the funny thing about that guy is that he was like this bit part actor for more than a decade, for like a decade and a half. He was just a bit part actor who would like come on for like one scene in a movie. People would make fun of him, or he'd get like he'd get his ass kicked by the hero and he'd be out. He did
Really?
that for 15 years before he cracked the Gangs of
Wow.
Wasseypur role and just became huge. So yeah, he has a very interesting story.
I would say probably my third favorite would be I'm going to say Bobby. I really like Bobby. That was a fun. Rishi looks so young. Rishi Kapoor looks so young in that film. So those would be my three favorite, I would say.
Okay, so we'll take a couple more questions. Soumya says, what do you think are some things that Americans could do or educate themselves about better to develop a better friendship with Indians or to develop a better understanding of Indians? Because they're a very unique immigrant group, aren't they, Indians?
Yeah, I would say they are. They are. It's I think what I would do is I would use film. I would because I think film is a good gauge of culture. It's a safe way to show somebody culture because you're just immersing them in the screen. It's not, overwhelming. I would show them some films. I would show them some films and, kind of see where they go watching the film. And then you can kind of follow up with things. I think talk to Indians. When I talk to Indians, when I see an Indian in public and I get an opportunity to walk up and say Jai Hind to them, and they do a double take, like what? And talk with them. Be respectful. Be respectful. I've never had a bad experience with an Indian. Never. And I'm sure they're Indian jerks, right? But I've never had a bad experience with an Indian talking with them. Like when I think about like how the Sikhs were with me, so kind, so loving, so caring, do the same to Indians. Especially if it's here in America, help them. I always try to, help them assimilate into American culture at a level that they feel comfortable with. Help them.
Right. And I don't know, so let's take one more question. And this is an interesting question because I kind of wanted to bring it up, but I didn't get the chance to. And let me just make sure that I know who it is from so I can give them due credit. This is from Ashok again. This is Ashok Kimparuvaiya.
The king? King Ashoka?
No. I think it's a descendant though. So he says, I don't know if you heard about this necessarily, but did you see that the US pulled out of the UNHRC, the Human Rights Commission?
Yes.
I think a couple of days ago they pulled out, and I have my opinions on that as well. I, for one, think it's a good decision because they needed a kick up the backside. Mm-hmm. But that's what Ashok was asking. That what's your opinion about the US pulling out?
I think so much with the UN has just gone sideways. They've strayed so far from the original mandate. And again, it is a tool for the left to persecute certain nations. And I look at how anti-Israel they are. I as much as I enjoy India, I enjoy Israel. Those are like my homie nations. and I think it's a good move. I think it's a move just to set them straight, to say, hey, listen, when you guys are serious about this, then fine, we'll be happy to come back. I think the left has gotten into so much stuff. They need a good punch in the mouth.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just telling you from like the American point of view, growing up, the far left, they cannot take a punch in the face. They can't do it. Right? As soon as just like when you criticize one of them, it's just a complete meltdown. And so I think any ways that you can just beat them down and get them in line to be quiet, calm down, I think is good. And I think, look what happened when Trump announced that, we're going to move our embassy.
Yeah, to Jerusalem.
Well, I mean, you're telling me
Everybody lost their minds.
two sovereign nations can't decide what they want to do? Like, oh, you can't do that. And who's the
Yeah.
one screaming? Was it who was screaming? Was it the Buddhists? Was
Nope.
it the Hindus? Wasn't the Christians? So there you go. I mean, I think that says it all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so true because, again, it was a sovereign country deciding where to
Yes.
put where the
Yes.
embassy in another sovereign
Yeah.
country. So
Yes,
it's just such a silly. I don't
I
know.
agree.
I just think it's such a silly thing to do and silly thing to worry about. And I agree with you as well that they needed a firm kick up the backside because
Yes, I agree. I agree.
they've they take all this money from these they take, well, number one, they take a lot of money from America, and they take a lot of money from the OPEC countries, all these Middle Eastern countries, the richer Middle Eastern country, and they just say what the Middle Eastern countries want them to say. And as long as they keep getting money from those countries, they don't really worry about what anybody else thinks. And I think it's a good wake up call because I think the largest economy of the world moving out of the UNHRC is a pretty bad look
Big.
for the UNHRC.
Yes.
So I hope
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath, but I hope that they can kind of fix their agenda a little bit.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
let me ask you something.
Yeah,
Did you have a good time with this?
100%.
I had a
really
great
fun.
time.
Yeah, it was really fun, and I was just gonna say that we should do this again. We should do this
Yeah.
again. We should have another chat. I think people enjoyed it. I think fair amount of people sort of tuned in to watch. So I think
Cool.
they had a good time too.
Cool. Yeah, I would love it. I'm rooting for your channel.
Oh, thank you.
I'm rooting for you, and I enjoy your content. And thank you for not hitting me with copyright strikes. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Whatever I can do for you, please let me know. I would be happy to. I'm looking forward to. How much longer do you have for school?
Well, I wrap up in towards the end of June. So no, end of July. Sorry. So beginning of
you're almost
August, I
done.
should be all done and dusted. Yeah.
Now, so when you're done with school, then maybe you come on Dark Sky. We'll do a radio show for you. What do you think?
We should work something out. We should try and figure something out. Because right now with like work and channel
Sure.
and all of that stuff is just completely crazy. So
Now, are you going to be doing any videos with your girlfriend?
Not anytime soon. But if I hit a certain amount of subscribers, then I might do a live stream with her. Because
Nice.
a couple of my subscribers have asked for it, so I said, okay, let me hit a certain number of subscribers, and then as a celebration.
How many subscribers?
I don't know yet. I haven't really figured out a number yet, but I don't know. I should figure out a number and kind of let
Figure
people
out a
know.
number.
Yeah, I should figure out a number and let people know. Yeah.
Now, do you mind for Dark Sky if I take some of your YouTube shows and put them up there, strip the audio out? Do you mind?
I don't know yet because the only reason I would wonder about that is just because I'm just trying to get my brand a little bit sorted out. So
Okay.
once I can sort of get my brand a little more established, I think we can go from there. So
Okay.
I'll just give it I think just a couple more months, and then I think we'll be good to go. Yeah.
Can I say hi to somebody?
Sure. Would you like to say hi?
Rishikesh, what's up, dude? Rishikesh, he's the one that was always telling me you need to react to him.
Oh, really?
Rishikesh he's my right arm.
Oh,
he helps
awesome.
me a lot.
Awesome. Hello, Rishikesh, from me as well. All right. So what we'll do is again, thank you for the people to send in the questions. I appreciate it. I hope you guys had a fun time watching today's episode. I really had a really, really good time chatting to you today. I hope you had a good time as well.
I loved it. It was a great time.
Awesome. Fantastic. So again, thanks guys. I have the Professor's YouTube channel in the description down below. So make sure to go check his channel out. Make sure to go subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's got some fun stuff down there. Again, thank you for watching. If you like what I do here on the show, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel right there as well. I will see you for the next episode. And thanks again to the professor for coming on. I will see you guys for the next time. And until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.